So welcome to today's talk, and thank you so much for coming. Our talk today is brought to you by the Philosophy of Education Society of Great Britain, the Edinburgh branch Talks to Teachers seminar series. My name's Andrea English, and I'll be hosting the talk today. This talk is also supported by the Philosophy of Education Research Group at Murray House School of Education and Sport. I'd like to give you a little bit of background to our speaker. Are very honored to have Lobsang Phuntsok, and he has in 2003 he founded the Jhamtse International, a nonprofit organization in the United States dedicated to educating and nourishing hearts and minds in love, compassion, wisdom, and tolerance. And under his leadership and guidance, the organization is run and managed by his students and dedicated volunteers. In 2006, Lobsang started the Jhamtse Gatsal children's community in Lumla near his hometown. The community accepts orphaned and most at-risk children from nearby villages to give them a chance at life and success. Inspired by his vision and mission, many supporting organizations and groups have emerged in around 50 countries around the world. In 2016, Lobsang was invited by the United Nations to be a keynote speaker during the Universal Children's Day celebrations. The discussions were sparked by screenings of Emmy Award-winning short documentary Tashi and the Monk, which is based on his life and the work at Jhamtse Gatsal. Today, we are so fortunate to have him here, and we have just been speaking before the audience came at how we have been planning this event for about a year, and with technology and COVID and all of the concerns of the world, it's amazing that we have come to this opportunity and have so many people interested in this topic, and we're so fortunate to have you here. And today the talk will be about and entitled The 3 Essentials for the 21st Century, Educating the Heart, Mind, and Body. So I'll turn it over to you, Lobsang.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much, the University of Edinburgh organizing, and especially Andrea. And thank you so much, everybody who's participating and giving your attention. So before I start, I would.
Oh, I think you've just gone on to mute, Lobsang. I think you're, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
To rejoin the call. We'll have to quickly. Can they hear us?
Can you see now? Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
So thank you for your patience. So
okay.
There's always something. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for your patience. So thank you everyone again joining for this discussion. And so my focus will be today on three essentials, what we call the three essential educating heart, mind, and a body. And this is basically the philosophy of Jhamtse Gatsal Children's Community. We have been working on this for last over 16 years, I think. And I have a short presentation here, and I will go through these presentation, and then after that we can give enough time for Q&A. So before we go into this, and this is I guess slightly different from many of the education system which exist in the world. So it will be different because we are not just focusing on educating the mind, but also heart and body. And one of the important thing that I believe that any time when we think of reimagining of education, and it's the important is it begins with the internal shift of the mindset in the educators, policymakers, and family. So this is, I think, without the making an internal shift inside the adult's mindset, I think it will be impossible to bring a change from inside, the outside to the inside. But change really has to begin from the inside to outside. And no matter what, like how much money or resources we spend on changing the external infrastructure of our education facility, if the internal shift is not made before, and I think then that becomes a big problematic. So I always emphasize on the real change has to start from these three maybe important adults: educator, a policymaker, and a parents. And in order to understand that, I would like to go. So this is a two fundamental outlook I described. So the first one is, is as a log of wood. And second thing is you see the small seeds in the middle of half apple. So these are two fundamental outlook. And the philosophy of Jhamtse Gatsal is we really talk about the education is more nurturing, more like nurturing and growing is a process of gardening. Able to see that every child as a seed. When we able to see child as a seed, that we could see that inside the tiny seed, a huge tree with a lot of fruits and growing really huge trees that we could see that. And that is a believing in the potential of the child, believing in a child. That is how our outlook is. But when we look at a log of wood, and then we see that as something, it's a dead wood, then it is basically we are thinking of the relying on the skills of the carpenter. The basically every quality or every quality or characteristic that someone has to input on the log. So these are two that whether we see a child as a seed or we see child as a log is a two very important perspective and outlook. And I think from this perspective or the outlook, I think we actually make a huge difference in the way we educate and why we educate and how we educate our children. So here is the carving mindsets. Often because we see the children as when we educate in most of the schools and we think about their future. And their future is also, we see their future according to the market or maybe, what they want to become in the future and what they should become in the future. And that is a mindset we go. And so the educational institution or the educators and the parents, and we are basically carving that child according to the future that we see in the society, the demand and what society expected from them. And that is basically, it's not supporting the child. It is not the child-centered approach. It is basically the system-centered approach. And this kind of mindset or outlook is basically supporting system rather than a learning. And this is like when you will always see the child comes to the school, we see that as a piece of the wood or that as a raw material. And we are thinking, okay, we need to educate this. Basically, we need to curb this. We need to make something, whether the child likes or not, whether the child is happy about or not, because we know as an adult, maybe as a policymaker, maybe as a parent, maybe as an educator, we know what is the best for you and you should become that. So that is a carving mindset, which is not child-centered, but which is actually the system-centered, and we are supporting system instead of the learners. So the second approach with the nurturing mindset I'm talking about, if we see a child as a seed, then we have a totally different perspective about educating, why we are educating and how we want to educate. And that is not so much relying on the egos of the educator, the egos of the adults, that we think that we know, what you should become, and you should become that, and you should become that, and you should learn this. And that is so much about the relying on the ego of the adults, not the potential of the learners, not the potential of the child. But when we have this, the nurturing mindset and able to see a child as a seed, then we are really focusing on the potential, able to see that big tree inside that tiny seed, that is a nurturing mindset. And then basically that is more believing in a child, potential, believing in that child, that there is something inside that child, the tiny child, there's amazing thing that we could see that. So that mindset or that outlook again changes that how we educate our child, and it changes our relationship with the children. So these are two fundamental outlook I normally share about this. But, and it is, I think, it is sometimes a deviation from the norm is necessity to make a change possible. To make a change possible, deviation. But we don't like to take a risk, and change is difficult for us. But sometimes we take many unnecessary risks, and we love to explore better possibilities. But when it comes to education, everybody wants to play the safe. And even our policymakers, even our governments, they want to be very careful about where they're putting money. And also even the teachers, we as a teachers, or we as the parents, and we do not want to take a risk, a necessary risk. And we do not want to even explore the possibility of a better way of educating, And then at this, same time, for the other unnecessary things, we take a lot of risk, and we love to explore a different possibility there. So I want to share here something. So look at this. So this is a little bit a joke, but I think this makes a lot of sense to me. It makes a lot of sense. I just want to take 2 seconds and think about what is this? What are the 3 photos that I'm sharing? I'm sharing with you. So this is just look at this images and think, what is this? So this is basically, these are the underwears. The first one is the men's underwears, and the second 2 is a woman's underwear. Now, interesting thing is that even when we look at one of our necessities like underwear, so we do a lot of explorations. And somebody told me during my presentation, Lobsang, do you know how much money people put into design underwear? and how many great minds of the people, involved in designing such things as such things like underwear. And you will see that then, when it comes from education, we are still very stuck with a very old traditional education system. And we are not willing to still take a risk. And everybody is a little concerned about that, how we move forward with, as I mentioned, whether it's our government or educators or parents, and we are very concerned about that. And then in so many different areas, we like to take a risk. We like to explore the possibility. So this is how I see from the simple things that underways, how much is a change. But when we think of the education system, we are still using 100 years, more than 100 years old education system, and then we are struggling with that all the time, And now this is now I want you to forget this underwear presentation now, and before I go to move on to the real educating the whole child, educating the whole child, educating mind, heart, and body. So now, this is the important part that when we talk about educating whole child, how do we do that? And there are certain points that we, as an educator, that we always have to remember, that whenever we are with children, whenever whether you're inside a class or when you're outside the class, and it has to be basically our second nature. Whenever we think of a child, that we have to think this, So the nurturing mindset, kind of the gardener's mindset, is that the most important thing is, as a gardener, if you do the gardener, maybe not the commercial farming and a gardener, but when you are organic gardener, then number one is that we have to believe that every plant is a unique. So these are very important points that I would like to share with you, that how do we educate whole child? How do we give the holistic education to raise the holistic child, so that every the plant is a unique. We should not have one perspective about one kind of the expectation that every child has to be like this. And this, if you are like this, then you are smart. If you are not like this, then you are not as smart, and which is our whole education system is right now doing. And number one biggest challenge is, again, I say, to reimagination of education has to begin with the internal shift of adults' mindset. Are we able to make that internal shift is an important question. So that has to start from our internal mental shift. It has to start. The first thing is anybody who comes to your school or you educate, you have to believe and you have to respect that every child is unique. They all are different. And that is a quality of every child. Like any plant, the gardener grows vegetables or the flowers, but he or she would believe that every plant, every flower is unique in itself. Same thing that we have to believe when you educated children. And second, we need to realize and we need to believe is that every plant has a different needs, which again, we don't do in our education system. We do not encourage an education system. And we have so many excuses of why we cannot do that, and we don't do that. And if you are the good gardener, and you will know that every plant has a different needs. And some plants need a lot of sun, and some plants, they don't need a lot of sun. And some plants, they need a lot of water, and some, they need less water. So you will see that every plant has a different need. So while educating child, one of the most important, important thing for the educator is to, if we can able to see that every child is unique and every child has a different needs, and that is a second point that we emphasize here at the Jhamtse Gatsal Children's Community? Because every child has a different needs. So every child has a different contribution. You know, some child would be very good at the math. And of course, we need to recognize that. But some child may not be good at the math, but they will be very good at the dance and arts and sports. So why we need to, you know, push and force them to be same needs and the same contribution. The world is going to be so boring if we try to produce every children when they come to our school. So there are different needs because they have a different needs, and because they have a different needs, so they will have very different contributions. And that is the third that we need to remember. And the fourth is every child has a pace of growth that is different, intrinsic and natural. So now you see why I'm saying this. For example, I'm going to give you at the Jhamtse Gatsal Children's Community in our school, if one child takes 3 years to complete or 3 years to complete their 10th standard, and we allow that child, we recognize effort, not the outcome. We recognize not the result. We emphasize on effort. If you are sincerely putting effort, the 100% effort is what we expected from the child, not the 100% result, not the 100% outcome of what you're doing. So if one child will say, you know, I will need another year to complete this grade, and we would give that, and we would encourage that. So every plant, some plants, they grow very fast. And within maybe 3 weeks, the vegetables or something, some vegetables grow really fast and you can eat it. But some vegetables takes a long time. So because they're unique, because their needs are different, because their contributions are different, because of that, their pace of the growth is also different. And it is an intrinsic and a natural. There's nothing wrong with that. And we should not impose from outside saying, oh, this science says this, by this time you should know this. And who are we just telling it, by this age you should know this, by this age you should know this? Who are we that telling by this age they should know? I think it's a completely wrong we're doing in so many different areas today in this world in the name of education. Yeah. And then we have to remember the childs are not like a dead log. It's alive, it's a full of life. And we need to work with them. It is a partnership that educators, parents, and the children is a partnership because they are full of life. We cannot impose of that. We cannot actually, go and do so much from outside. And we need to believe, and they are full of life. They are, when we understand they are full of life, even that we can sometimes see their naughtiness, even when we can see sometimes when they make certain, naughty things, we could see beauty in that because that is a life. It's supposed to be like this. They are not supposed to be like compliant and just, that everything that's doing what we expected is not the child. If we are thinking of this as a nurturing, this as a basically a growing a garden, then we need to also understand this. And they has a potential of regeneration. See, the death things when we say, what so much we do is an education system is, oh, you should become this, and this is the what you can become successful and you can make a lot of money. So we tell them, and we basically in all these years in education, we are basically carving everything from outside, and by the time they become what they expected, you see their life is basically end, and there's no life in that kind of children if we put so much from the outside. And the last part is very important, I think, is every child has a growth, and that is excuse me.
Genla, we are unable to hear you.
It's only achieved.
I think there's a video delay.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. So this last one is a very important thing that, you know, every child has a wholesome growth that is only achieved through holistic nurturance, not selective nurturance. And even that when we think about the plant, if you like a flower, the petal of a flower's petal or color or the shape, and when you nurture that, you have to nurture that holistically. You know, you cannot just pick one part and say you emphasize on that to basically educate that. So that is very the important part. And so that's why the three essential is basically that we are talking about just educating a mind, even though that is a part of mind. Maybe it is not a good approach. And we need to think of educating whole child, which is so important. The educating heart-minded part is a very essential part of, should be essential part of our education. So I will just go through this, and then we will come back and we will do a Q&A. So this is what we in Jhamtse Gatsal, we believe this is a better approach. Maybe this is an alternative, I should say, maybe not the better, but we believe this is another way of educating a child. Right now, what we see is a current education system which really limits growth. It's like a bonsai tree. You know, we as adults, we have a certain expectations and how, the child should be and what should be the outcome of education. Basically, what we see is the system is very limited. The system is not supporting the holistic growth of a child. Our education system is very narrow. It's very rigid. It's like a bonsai. The base is not supporting the current education system. It is not supporting the learners. It's basically supporting the system. You know, where that in education talks about supporting a whole child. You know, I think we could sometimes teach our children to solve their real life challenges in the way that we teach them to solve a math problem. You know, when child is having hard time, and I wish that we all can have a real life problem solving classes in all our schools. You know, what we do when child struggle with the math, and we will, ask the child to do, let's do one more practice. And let's do one more practice. Again, come and he or she did it. Then the teachers will encourage, okay, do one more time. We let them go through these challenges many times until they get the right answer. But in a real life problem, when it comes to real life problem solving, and we don't encourage this. We don't have really we have classes of math or science or language, all these things, but we don't have classes for solving the real life challenges in their life. And wish that, in our schools that we have such classes. And I feel right now, what I feel is one of the root causes of mental health is basically overemphasizing the importance of human doing and neglecting human beings. We are so focused on getting child on the, what do you call the A+ in all the subject we are putting, and everybody is measuring the success of school and education and child, how much they're getting, what kind of grade they're getting in a subject that we are teaching. So we are like so emphasizing on what you call the outcome and ignoring the whole process, basically overemphasizing on their doing and neglecting their being. And that's why you see the mental health is becoming another big challenge. In India, we have every year, so many young children committing suicide. And a lot of these, the suicides are related to the stress of their education. And sadly, and this is what is happening. So now holistic education system is instead of changing a tree, and we must believe that tree, this bonsai tree has a potential to become one of the maybe biggest tree in the world. The problem right now is not within the tree. The problem is the base, the tray, the small limited part, which is the problem. And if we break this apart, or this tray, and plant this tree in the land, I think this tree will become big and flourish. So we again and again that the we need to think of a system. We need to really educate our educators. We need to educate our policymakers. We need to educate our parents. So now I'm leading you towards what I'm talking about, the educating the whole person. And this is a thing I'm sure that many of you heard about the Chinese bamboo. And normally when you grow the Chinese bamboo, the first year, you don't see anything coming out of the ground. And the second year, very similar. By third year, you even actually starting to doubt that, what you have planted, and every day you're taking care of, expecting something will come out from the ground, is you will doubt about that, or what's happening, maybe it's nothing growing. And the story of, I'm going to make this, long story short, by the fifth year, then you will see something coming out from the ground, and within the maybe few weeks, the Chinese bamboo grows up to the 80 or 90 feet high. And this is a very important. Why the Chinese bamboo takes so long to grow is after fourth year, by the fifth year, the Chinese bamboo can grow like 80 to 90 feet within a few weeks. So in order to bear that kind of growth, and that bamboo requires a very solid root system. So it takes many years to actually, build or grow the solid root system. And this is how the bamboo trees grow. And we as an educator, it's also important to believe that, our work is not just in, one day, that you do so many things, you do the big things, and then you suddenly want to see something amazing result in the next year, or maybe in the next month. And this is not we should expect. It's basically believing in every small actions we do in every day. every small things when child comes, able to greet with the open-hearted, able to actually, when child is going through a difficult situation, even you cannot do anything, basically being with the child. What I think is that what really counts is every small actions we carry on every day as an educator, because the Chinese bamboo growers, they do, for first 4 years, they see nothing, but every day they will visit to that garden, they will pour water, they will make sure the plant is protected. And the third part is the persistence and the patience and the faith, to have a faith, and someday something will grow out of this ground, and it will grow so tall, so huge suddenly. And this is a faith that we have to keep in our mind as an educator. So this is the 3 lessons that we talk so often here as a Jhamtse Gatsal. And the first one is like, all these years that we emphasize on building a strong foundation to stand on, building child's character, values, and attitude. Every small things we do it matters. You don't have to think. Sometimes we as educators, okay, we think, okay, let's build amazing, put $1 billion or $1 million and build something really big, and that will bring the change. And I don't think that is a huge project is really matters. What really it takes is to grow the strong and amazing human being, and really happy and amazing future adults. What it really matters is the small things we do in every day as a child, a bamboo grower. So as I said, it takes persistence, patience, and faith. So now, and this is what we call the 7 elements of a growth, the fundamental elements of the growth. And these are something, what we do in the Jhamtse Gatsal is, instead of having a class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so we will have a class of interdependence, and we will have a class of equanimity, we will have a class of gratitude, we will have the class of generosity, we will have a class of love, and then compassion and responsibility. And these are the, in order to nurture, in order to educate a holistic child, and this is what we do, emphasize a lot in the first 5 years. Of course, it is like, continue till they, as long as they are here with us, but we emphasize a lot on this. These are the fundamentally a root of strong roots of educating the whole person. I think this is some general questions that I normally get is people saying, what do you mean educating whole person, and what do you mean educating a body? So I normally tell that we have an amazing carpenter here, and we have also amazing painter here. And every day, one of my responsibility when I visit them, and I just always surprised, and I'm amazed with what they can do with the 10 fingers. It's something amazing. And when I look at them, and I feel all my fingers are totally uneducated. I don't know what I do with these fingers. I don't really produce anything from my fingers. And this is amazing, So when we think about educate, we think again of a very small part of our brain educating, and we are not thinking of anything else. But most of the people in this world, I believe, like me, our fingers are not educated, are very totally uneducated. And I see somebody who sings so well, who is an amazing singer in our community we have, that I feel my throat is uneducated. I have an uneducated throat. And somebody who's amazing dancer, we have amazing dancer. When I look at them, I feel I have an uneducated hip. And somebody can play amazing football and they can do so many things as dance. I feel that I have uneducated feet. You see, even looking at my own life, I feel I have My fingers are not educated, my throats are not educated, my hips are not educated, my feet is not educated. Basically, 95%, more than 95% of Lobsang is a totally uneducated. And I feel sad about that. And I wish that, I do have this potential. If after right education, I should have educated my fingers. I can do so many beautiful things with my finger. I should have educated my throat. I can do much singer than my present singer. I can, right now I sing people just, they need air, what you call air plugs. I said, too noisy. And if I move a hip, everybody laughs, nobody claps. I wish I have an educated hip. So when I move, everybody will look at me and enjoy. I can make people happy. So these are the things, I think. So the importance that we really, really, really emphasize here is we as an adult, we need to change our mindset. When we educate a child partially, sometimes we succeed and sometimes we fail as an educator. We all know that. When we educate a child partially, which is like the current education system all over the world, most of the education system, if I'm not wrong, we are partially educating a child. And when we do that, sometimes we succeed and sometimes we fail as an educator. But when we educate a whole child, we prevail, we succeed, no matter what outcome. And we need to emphasize that, they might fail in a math, but if we educate whole child, and they will always prevail and they will always succeed. They might fail in our classroom because of the classroom expectation. They might not fulfill our educators, teachers' expectations, our parents' expectation, and they fail in the education system with that expectation. But if we educate a whole child, and they will succeed in their life. So this is what I feel so important for us to think.
Thank you so much. We're just, a little over time, but I think that everyone has really enjoyed listening. I know you have a lot of comments of thankfulness and gratefulness in the chats. So we're so grateful. And to everyone listening, thank you for staying. Thank you for listening.